are listening to the Up and Under podcast, starting in 3, 2, 1.
Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome into the Up and Under podcast. I'm your host, Hani. Joined with me, as always, it's Zeeshan.
Yo.
All right, we have finally made it past probably one of the most exciting times besides the offseason in the NBA calendar, and it's the NBA trade deadline. And, you know, boy, did it not disappoint.
Listen, for me, it disappointed a little bit. I was going to say I thought there'd be more moves that would happen, particularly for our Raptors, right? I think that was the biggest disappointment. But it was still a very good trade deadline nonetheless, and we had a major move that we're going to talk about to start off the episode.
I would say we had a lot of major moves that kind of happened around the league. A lot of shakeups, a lot of players going to different places, a lot of teams moving into different directions that, to be honest, some of them we didn't even expect them to be going that way. So, yeah. So if you haven't already caught on, this is going to be our trade deadline recap episode. We're basically going to be breaking down the majority of the trades that happened. You know, obviously ranking the more notable ones we'll talk about a bit more, and then obviously bring up some of the smaller trades that we felt that we wanted to bring up. But yeah, pretty eventful trade deadline nonetheless. Before we even get started, if you haven't already done so, subscribe to the show on YouTube and all the other podcasting platforms so you never miss a great episode from us. But starting us off with the first trade, and probably the biggest trade that kind of happened, and it took a lot of, I guess, if you're following the news, it was maybe going to happen or maybe not going to happen, depending on who you really trusted to follow. But the Ben Simmons saga has finally ended with Philadelphia. The Philadelphia 76ers pulled off a blockbuster trade with the Brooklyn Nets, in which case the Philadelphia 76ers acquired James Harden and Paul Millsap from the Nets in exchange for Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, a 2022 first-round pick, a 2027 protected first-rounder. And man, this was a huge piece of news, not only because of the fact that James Harden clearly was not happy in Brooklyn. Now, this just so happens to be James Harden basically asking out of another team almost a year after he asked out of Houston. And, you know, the Sixers made it pretty clear. Daryl Morey made it abundantly clear. He wanted James Harden, and he finally got their man. You know, but the one thing I will have to say with this deal, now, yes, James Harden was the best player traded in this deal. The Sixers did give up some depth. They gave up Seth Curry, who, again, say what you want, he is still one of the best shooters in the game. You know, defensively, he might not be a great player, but offensively, he gives you floor spacing, which every team needs. So giving that up. And Andre Drummond, again, we've made fun of Andre Drummond before, but again, the guy has, you know, been a pretty solid contributor for the Sixers this season. And then, not to mention, they gave up 2 first-round picks, which is kind of funny because Daryl Morey was asking for multiple first-round picks for Ben Simmons, and he ended up having to give some away. Now, it is for James Harden.
Yeah, so like this move kind of came out of, like they've been talking about this move for like, it seems like a year already.
Apparently Woj said that they started seriously talking about, like the Nets started talking about trades on the deadline, like basically like deadline day is when they started talking.
That's literally what happened, right? We've heard about this move since basically James Harden asked out of Houston. Philadelphia was one of the teams that, you know, he was trying to go to. And so this move had been brewing for like the last year or so. But basically, over the past like 2 or 3 days is when it became a real possibility. And then obviously, I don't know if like any of us really expected it to happen. But, on the trade deadline, we got the news that James Harden is now a 76er. And like Hani said, for the 76ers, they gave up some depth for James Harden, right? And now that's something you have to sacrifice when you're acquiring a superstar. But the problem is, which version of James Harden are you acquiring, right? It's clear that this James Harden is not the same one as the Houston James Harden. But he could be a bit better in a new situation on a real championship contender that's not having all these internal issues, you know, with Kyrie's situation. And then,
well, we even know James Harden can turn it on when he wants to. Like last season when he got traded from Houston to Brooklyn, you just saw the guy was like third in the MVP race. He put on a very good season for the Nets for the remainder when he was there.
Yeah, I will say, though, that this fit with Embiid, it's a perfect match on paper, right? It's the new Shaq and Kobe, so to speak. However, if you actually look at it, how well will this pair fit together? James Harden obviously likes to have the ball in his hands. We know he can really pass the ball. But what's his effectiveness when he's not the first option? And when he has to especially, give to a guy in Embiid who's going to demand the ball in the post. What is the fit going to be like? What's the pairing going to be like between them two? Now, ideally, the pick and roll is going to be a monster combination. But then again, we also have Doc Rivers, who somehow made it onto the greatest coaches list. I don't understand how.
How many Game 7s did he blow?
This guy's literally the biggest choker in NBA history.
I mean, he's the top
And
75 coach,
again,
apparently.
we have Doc Rivers managing this. If there's one person I'm not confident in, it's Doc Rivers. Listen, we gave a lot of crap to Tyronn Lue, but Tyronn Lue is showing how much of a better coach he is than Doc Rivers in LA, right? So Doc Rivers will have to figure out how to utilize these guys without taking away from their strengths. So James Harden in his isolation game, Joel Embiid in his isolation game. So that will be interesting.
Yeah, no, I definitely think there's a strong likelihood this could work out in terms of James Harden's a much better fit than what Ben Simmons was with Joel Embiid. Like, that's plain as day. But again, I think the main incentive is that James Harden's going to be motivated to prove them. Because again, this is something I actually heard was that James Harden can't do this again. Like, he cannot ask and force his way out of Philadelphia like he did with Houston and now like he did with Brooklyn.
Well, side note, that's reportedly why he didn't ask for an official trade request from the Brooklyn Nets, because he didn't want that backlash.
Well, his perception's already tainted in the league anyways. But if he wants to, mitigate some of the backlash, he's got to perform. And that's the biggest question mark for the Sixers. They gave up a lot for him. But if he performs and the Sixers go on a playoff run, this will all be pretty worth it.
Again, Embiid now has a second option.
And they still kept Tobias Harris. They still have Maxey. They still have Tybal.
Tybal was the big one. Tybal and Maxey, right? They didn't have to give up either of those guys.
So they still have some players on this team. And even getting Paul Millsap, I think he can still contribute in whatever way he can. So not a bad move for the Sixers. Flipping things over to the Brooklyn Nets. Now, we all know my favorite player, Ben Simmons, to talk about. But, I'll say this for the Brooklyn Nets. They didn't necessarily get better from this trade in terms of, are they going to be a better team without James Harden? I don't think they will be. But the team is a lot more balanced than it was with James Harden on it. Now, they got Ben Simmons. And again, we don't know when Ben Simmons is going to play, when his mental health, whatever that issue is going to clear up for. We all know Kyrie Irving's a notorious part-time player. So you have now two of the most...
KD's injured as well.
KD's also injured. You also have two of the most fragile, mentally unstable, unpredictable players in the league on your team now. So that's also tough. But if Ben Simmons can return to form, if he can kind of get back to what we saw with the Sixers, he's still one of the best defenders in the league. He's one of the best passers, one of the best rebounders. If he can get back to that level, he will still be a valuable contributor for the Brooklyn Nets. And then, obviously, you're bringing up Seth Curry. Joe Harris is pretty much, I think, out for the year at this point.
Probably.
He's hurt, so getting another shooter to replace him. And then finally getting the big man that the Nets desperately needed. They needed a bigger body. And getting Andre Drummond is not a bad option for the Nets. So they didn't necessarily get better, but the team is a lot better. And then they also got draft picks, which is still kind of funny for me. You have 2 first-rounders to get Ben Simmons. That's pretty decent work by Sean Marks.
To your point, I think I'm going to disagree with you because of your point. I think the Nets did get better, to be honest. And here's why. Like you said, they have a more balanced team now. Ben Simmons basically plugs the holes that they needed.
That's if he plays to that level.
Well, again, he doesn't even need to. He can just be regular Ben Simmons. Regular Ben Simmons plays all NBA defense. He's a great passer. He's a great rebounder. That's exactly what the Brooklyn Nets needed. They needed defense very badly. They needed a offensive creator who can pass the ball, give the ball to Kyrie and KD. And they needed a guy who can bang on the boards, right? And that's literally what the Brooklyn Nets got with Ben Simmons. So I think this is a perfect fit for Ben Simmons. Now, obviously, if the offensive production ramps up, then that's going to be even better for Brooklyn. But they got exactly what they needed in Ben Simmons. They got a shooter to, like you said, replace Joe Harris. And then, like you said, they got another big body to back up LaMarcus Aldridge or whoever plays the center position. One thing I will note as well, with this Ben Simmons deal, the Brooklyn Nets can play Ben Simmons at the 5. They can run that small ball lineup without sacrificing much because Ben Simmons can get those rebounds. He can defend on the defensive end.
Him and KD will be a good defensive combo. I really think those two will do some good work with each other. But again, I get what you're saying. In an ideal scenario, if everything works out, the Nets could realistically be better. But I'm talking about from right now, we don't know that. So right now, if I had to say, are you better with one of the best players in the world in James Harden, or are you worse without him? So that's why I'm saying, because James Harden is also more reliable than Ben Simmons. B, I think he's a better overall player than, well, maybe not defensively, but he's a better player than Ben Simmons. So to me, and I think him paired with Embiid is
well, here's the thing, right?
combo.
It wasn't working out right now, so that's why they had to make that move. So acquiring Ben Simmons, even if you don't bank on all of the potential, I think it's still a great move for the Nets nonetheless. And also, they have this team going into next season, so they don't necessarily have to have a one and done year this year.
And the one last thing I will point out is for the Sixers, Daryl Morey is really staking a lot on this trade. If this does not work out, I really think Daryl Morey might be out in Philly, to be honest with you.
But I don't know about that, man. They kept Elton Brand around.
Listen, man, it's definitely a high risk move, but definitely the blockbuster of the trade deadline so far. So if you had to grade the 76ers, what would you say they're gonna give?
A B plus. Listen, they had to make a move, and Daryl Morey, to his credit, stuck to what he was gunning for. Now he didn't get everything he wanted, but that's kind of the consolation you have to do with trade-offs. But he stuck with what he wanted, and he got what he wanted.
Yeah, I would say a B plus is kind of what it is. Again, giving up the depth that I think is definitely lowers the trade, at least in our books. But in terms of, you got James Harden, you got the best player in the deal, so you definitely deserve some props for that one. Then the Brooklyn Nets.
I would give them like an A minus. If we're giving the 76ers like a B plus, I would give them an A minus because of the fact that they got exactly what they needed. Plus, they got some additional depth, and they also got some draft picks on top of that, which they could package in another deal moving forward, at least in the offseason. So I think the Brooklyn Nets really got a good amount out of this trade.
I'm going to be a little bit, because I'm not as optimistic as this working out, at least because, again, I don't trust Ben Simmons and Kyrie Irving. I'll give it a B plus. I think it's a good return in terms of you traded away James Harden and you basically got a pretty decent haul for him. But it is risk, to be honest with you, and I don't know how much Kevin Durant loves this, as we saw with the All-Star draft. Man, this is what happened when you pair with Kyrie Irving. I'm just putting it out there. So that was the first blockbuster deal that kind of happened on the trade deadline. The next trade we want to bring up, and this is a weird one. This is a weird trade that nobody really expected it to happen, especially with the two teams involved. But Kristaps Porzingis is on the move again. And now Kristaps Porzingis was apparently traded to the Washington Wizards in exchange for Spencer Dinwiddie and Davis Bertans. So the Wizards, I guess, they clearly didn't want Dinwiddie. I guess Dinwiddie was having locker room issues, and after the Wizards really did that whole sign and trade in the offseason.
Well, he sucked. Put it plainly, he sucked.
Yeah, he wasn't really great for them. And then obviously the locker room stuff kind of played in this. So they didn't really like him. Bertans clearly has not been the same player since signing that extension with the Wizards.
Listen, man, he finessed money, bro.
He absolutely finessed money.
I don't hate it. I can't hate it.
Now, again, he's still a shooter. I think he can eventually, in the right situation, return the form. But, again, he's still a negative defensively, so that also hurts him. So those two contracts, they clearly wanted to get rid of. But, so I guess the main question is, why Porzingis? Like, what made you think we got to go after Kristaps Porzingis? Now, from the Mavs side of things, okay, the Mavs didn't want Porzingis. They also wanted to sign a guy like Dorian Finney-Smith to an extension, which they did sign him to a 4-year, $55.5 million extension. Like, the main question is, why would the Wizards want Porzingis? And also for the Mavs, how does Dinwiddie make Luka Doncic's life easier?
Well, this is why this trade was so confusing, because it was, okay, the Wizards, for their end, they got rid of some contracts that they didn't want. And clearly, they're trying to change things around. We don't know what's going to happen with Bradley Beal.
Please get traded.
Porzingis has 2 years, $69 million remaining on his contract. The last year is a player option, which obviously he will opt in for. So you have to pay him those $69 million. So clearly, for these next 2 years, you're probably not going to do anything in terms of winning. For the Mavs, that's the real question. We know the Wizards suck. You know, they're probably gonna like try retooling, rebuilding, whatever.
Again.
Yeah. So the Wizards suck, whatever. The Mavs is the real question. It's the real head scratcher, right? Like you mentioned, you get rid of Porzingis' contract, which they've been trying to do. The problem is you just took on technically more money. So Spencer Dinwiddie has 2 years and $36 million remaining, which is partially guaranteed. The last year is, I think, $10 million guaranteed.
Yeah.
And then if they trade him or whatever it is.
I think Bertans is also partially guaranteed as well. I think he has like $5 million or something that he has in the last year.
Well, I didn't see that. I saw that he has 3 years, $49 million remaining, which is the last year is a player option. That's what I saw. Maybe you're right. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But basically, you just took back a bunch of money for a guy that you want to get rid of because he was making too much money. Spencer Dinwiddie, Davis Bertans are in no way, shape, or form better than Kristaps Porzingis. I don't care what you say. Kristaps Porzingis is at least a very good talent in the league. Now, is he on the court? No, right? And that's, again, the big issue with the Mavs. The problem is, Bertans, like you said, is a negative defensively. And the Mavericks have really been good on the defensive end. Particularly, Porzingis had a large part to do with that. Bertans is not going to give you anything defensively, and he's sucked shooting the ball, which is the one thing he's actually supposed to do on an NBA level. So if he's not giving you that, you're paying $49 million for a guy who's going to sit on the end of the bench. Dinwiddie, on the other hand, you can see the potential of, him handling the ball with Luka not being there. The problem is, in the playoffs, Luka is going to play 40 minutes a night, and so he's going to have the ball 95% of the time. So what the hell is the point of Spencer Dinwiddie? Because as we've seen, Spencer Dinwiddie not having the keys to an offense means he's complete trash. Yeah. And we thought it was bad with Bradley Beal. It's going to be even worse with Luka Doncic.
Yeah, the fit really doesn't make a ton of sense for the Mavs perspective. And then you bring up the money. I know Mark Cuban has a lot of money because he's pretty much loaded. But this move is very questionable in terms of what are you really trying to accomplish. The goal is to keep Luka Doncic happy and bring him support pieces to help him be great. This move, I don't see how that does that. And for the Wizards, again, the Wizards kind of suck. But this was probably the most puzzling move. Well, actually, not even. The Sacramento Kings have some puzzling moves too. But this was the most confusing move of the trade deadline to me.
Yeah, for sure.
But in terms of grades go, for the Dallas Mavericks, what do you think?
A C, because to be honest, that's being generous. I really don't understand.
I'd give them a C minus, to be honest with you. Yeah. I just don't understand what the hell they're doing. Wizards?
I don't know. If we give Dallas a C, Wizards like a C plus. I mean, it kind of makes a little bit more sense for them.
I give them both C minuses. I'm like, what is this trade, man?
It doesn't make sense. There might be something else behind the scenes that we don't know of.
Maybe.
But on paper, nobody knows what the hell this
Dallas can always flip Dinwiddie in the offseason. That's still a possibility. But again, why would you make this move? This was a confusing one for sure. The next trade, and this is 2 trades that the Portland Trailblazers made, because the Portland Trailblazers, they made a lot of moves, and you can argue whether they're good and bad, but they made some moves. The first move that they made was they offloaded Norman Powell and Robert Covington, sending them off to the Clippers in exchange for Eric Bledsoe, Justice Winslow, Keon Johnson, and a 2025 second-round pick via the Detroit Pistons. Now, this move, I don't know. This move was interesting, to say the least. This was basically Portland admitting that this is a lost season. But the weird thing is that you just signed Norman Powell to that extension this past offseason, and then literally at the deadline, you just flip him.
Yeah, so Portland fans were very mad, rightfully so, because they technically gave up Gary Trent Jr., who we're looking at right now is playing very well. So they gave up Gary Trent Jr. plus two first-round picks, I think, if I'm not mistaken, for basically Keon Johnson and Justice Winslow, I guess, and a second-round pick. That's the return you got for basically Gary Trent Jr. and 2 picks. It's not great. No. Portland basically admitted that they messed up. Now, again, it was under a previous administration and Neil Olshey. Obviously, we know he got booted out for not great reasons.
You know what I heard? Actually, the Trailblazers actually tried to trade for Gary Trent Jr. back.
Really?
Yeah, that was an offer that the Raptors got.
Yeah, so it wasn't great for the Portland Trailblazers. Portland is just in an interesting situation right now, and I think they've talked about, a bunch of people have talked about, basically ever since Paul Allen died, it's kind of gone downhill for the Portland Trailblazers. And for the Seattle Seahawks, too, it's kind of the same thing. Me being a Seahawks fan, I've seen the decline under Paul Allen's wife or whoever it is. So it's not a great situation right now in Portland.
No.
And piggybacking off of that trade, Portland made their next move was to trade away, their second best player in CJ McCollum, to the New Orleans Pelicans. So the New Orleans Pelicans got CJ McCollum, Tony Snell, and Larry Nance Jr., who's going to have surgery, I believe. And in return, the Blazers got Josh Hart, Joe Ingles, who's out for the season. Elijah Hughes, a 2027 second round pick, a protected 2022 first round pick, the right to swap second round picks with the Pelicans in 2026, and an additional 2027 second rounder. And making that move consecutively, the Portland Trailblazers, the Jazz in that move got Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Juancho Hernan-Gomez, who the Portland Trailblazers offloaded, and the Spurs got Thomas Satoransky and a 2022 second-round pick via the Grizzlies. So it's a lot of shuffling around.
It's two trades that they kind of morphed into one big trade. But the main pieces are C.J. McCollum heading to New Orleans, Josh Hart and Joe Ingles going to the Blazers, Nickeil Alexander-Walker heading to the Jazz, and Satoransky going to the Spurs.
And the Blazers basically getting a bunch of picks.
Oh, yeah. So the Blazers, the main reason why you move CJ McCollum, now we've been clamoring for them to move CJ McCollum for quite some time. The Dame and CJ experiment kind of ran its course, kind of like the DeMar DeRozan, Kyle Lowry situation, where you kind of just hit your ceiling and you got to, at some point, trade one of them to kind of hit the reset button a little bit and, do something different. Because you can't keep doing the same old thing. It's the definition of insanity, pretty much. And yeah, so the Blazers, they definitely freed up a lot of money to basically give the keys to Damian Lillard and be like, listen, whoever you want, we'll go after him in free agency, which I actually like. I think that's a great way to approach it if you're the Blazers. But at the same time, they also got a bunch of picks out of this, and I do like the pickup of Josh Hart. He's a serviceable role player. Joe Ingles, if they decide to bring him back, definitely interesting. Otherwise, it's, again, more money freeing up for them. So, not a bad trade. I especially like it for the Pelicans. I think the Pelicans finally did something in terms of they finally are like, listen, we have BI, we have Zion. Let's get another piece onto this team. Getting McCollum definitely is a pretty decent
After
move.
their terrible start, the Pelicans are now in the 10th seed, and they're literally right there. So, now we have the play-in tournament, so they can literally make the playoffs just in the 10th seed.
And CJ McCollum makes you better. This is not one of those moves that makes you worse or actually makes us scratch your head and be like, what the hell are they doing? This makes you better. You got a good player who's going to play, and he's going to make you a better team.
Basically, for Portland, they have two options. They freed up two options out of this trade. Either we have all of this open money that, we can get whoever we want or try to get whoever we want to surround Dame. Or if the Dame thing does not work out, we can go completely rebuild mode with all the picks that we acquired. And so it was not a great start, but I think they finished this trade deadline out decently well.
Yeah, now they have more of a direction. Again, we'll see what happens. But if we're going to, in terms of grades, what would you say the Blazers get?
B minus. I think, again, like I said, the start wasn't great. The finished product was all right. Like, you can see a clear direction at least.
I don't like the fact that the Blazers basically admitted defeat and were like, this is a wasted season. I don't necessarily love that. Especially if you're trying to keep Damian Lillard around. That's not necessarily the best thing. But again, the finish will definitely give him a B minus in my books. Clippers.
Oh, bro, they got Norman Powell for basically nothing.
Bro, and Robert Covington.
Oh yeah, and Robert Covington.
Bro,
again, this is a move that they're not gonna win anything this year, but moving forward next year, Robert Covington is gonna be a free agent. So if they want to bring him back, they can. But Norman Powell, having that guy off of your bench or in the starting lineup, however they utilize him, next to Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, this gives you a bona fide scoring team. It's a great move for the Los Angeles Clippers.
But please, Lawrence Frank, get your own idea. Stop copying the Raptors 2019 championship roster.
Bro, they're so unoriginal, man.
Bro, they are clearly unoriginal. And the New Orleans Pelicans.
They did all right. Like B plus. They got a good player in CJ McCollum, right? Borderline all-star to make that playoff push. And now, again, they also has, we've heard all the Zion rumors about him being unhappy. So, hey, now you got a very, a pretty solid team around him.
I'd give them a B plus. Now, obviously, the Spurs and the Jazz kind of with throw-ins. I'll give the Jazz a bit of a B minus, and I'll give the Spurs. Well, the Spurs kind of.
The Spurs got picked basically. Is what they were looking for, right?
B minus to be honest with you. But yeah, Portland made a lot of moves in the at the trade deadline. Moving us into the second team that made quite a bit of moves in the trade deadline, it's the Indiana Pacers. The first move that they made, this was pretty early. I think this happened last week or something like that. But basically, the Pacers traded away Karis LeVert to the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cavs got LeVert and a 2022 second-round pick from the Miami Heat. And the Pacers got Ricky Rubio, who unfortunately had a season-ending ACL injury. and a lottery protected 2022 first round pick, a 2022 second rounder from Houston, a 2027 second round pick via the Utah Jazz. This was an interesting move. Now, this was a move that I didn't even see coming because I wanted the Raptors to try to see if they can get LeVert, but also the fact that I didn't think the Pacers were going to look to move LeVert to...
Well, I mean, it was rumored.
It was rumored for sure, but I didn't think it was actually going to happen. Now, the big thing is that the Cavs went in and they made this move, and which I think is a pretty great move for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Not only are they having a great season, Darius Garland, congrats to him making his first All-Star team. Jared Allen, Evan Mobley have been playing great for them. They're having a good season. Like, they're playing really well, and now they're even continuing to build out. They're getting another piece in Caris LeVert. I think it's a pretty great move for them.
Yeah, the Cavs got better, right? We know Ricky Rubio wasn't going to play this season anyways, so they picked up Rajon Rondo basically to replace those Rubio minutes. And then Colin Sexton, they needed a replacement for him. So now they have Caris LeVert. We know they didn't want to pay Colin Sexton. He's probably going to be gone. So you get another young player in Caris LeVert who, by the way, is a good player right now. He can still develop. Obviously, he's kind of stagnated a bit, but in the right situation, alongside guys like Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, you could really see a great young collective.
And LeVert fits better, like I said, with Darius Garland versus a guy like Colin Sexton. And I think
bigger,
that he's bigger, and he can do. I think he can give you more, especially defensively. So I definitely like this move for Cleveland. And again, the Pacers got a few picks out of this. Like, in terms of you got Caris LeVert, and now you flipped him for a first and 2 seconds. It's not a bad return.
Yeah, and like we said, Caris LeVert has one more year with the Cavaliers, so they can definitely, convince him to re-sign next offseason if that's what they want to do. But like you mentioned, the Pacers got a bunch of picks out of it, and that's clearly, they're trying to rebuild. So that was definitely a great trade, I think, on both sides.
Now we get to the more confusing trade with the Indiana Pacers and the Sacramento Kings. Of course, it's the Sacramento Kings. The Sacramento Kings acquired Domantas Sabonis, Jeremy Lamb, Justin Holiday, and a 2027 second-round pick from the Indiana Pacers for Tyrese Halliburton, Tristan Thompson, and Buddy Hield.
Now, Tristan Thompson is reportedly going to get like a buyout or something. So
maybe, but the big piece is Domantas Sabonis was just moved to the Sacramento Kings for the Kings' best player in Tyrese Halliburton, who was taken by surprise by this because he thought he was in Sacramento for the long haul. Sorry, kid. You gotta welcome to the NBA. Like, it's a ruthless business.
Sacramento, man.
Especially Sacramento. And first and foremost, what the hell are the Sacramento Kings doing? Like, I know we say this every year, pretty much every month with the Kings, but I get Domantas Sabonis is a good player. He's a very good player, all-star player. He's a good player. How does he fit with De'Aaron Fox when A, you traded away some of the best shooters on your team in Tyrese Halliburton and Buddy Hield, and B, like, Domantas Sabonis doesn't solve all your issues. Like, he doesn't fix the bad coaching, the bad front office, the dysfunction everywhere. Like, he doesn't fix all that. So rather than trying to get some, build around Tyrese Halliburton,
who was a great culture guy.
He wanted to be there. You flip him. You basically broke that relationship and got Domantas Sabonis, who, to be fair, I don't even know how long he's going to be there, to be honest with you.
Well, he has 2 years remaining on his deal. So presuming, he's going to be there for 2 years. Again, obviously, like everyone else, I was very confused at what the Sacramento Kings were doing initially. Over time, I've kind of softened up towards this deal. Like, I don't hate it as much as I did. Because, they did get back an all-star. They're trying to push for the playoffs right now, which, I mean, I respect trying to win, but at the same time, we all know you're not going to do anything.
Your goal isn't to play in. Your goal is to be a good team.
And again, I'm not going to blame who's their new GM. I don't know. I forget who their new GM is. I'm not going to blame him directly because this seems like a very Vivek Ranadive move.
Yeah.
Right? So, and again, like you said, the fit with De'Aaron Fox is the problem, right? Because if they had kept Halliburton and got rid of Fox, I think we would have looked at this move a lot more favorably because you have a floor spacer next to Domantas Sabonis who can work in the post and, make those post pass entries and whatnot. Now you have De'Aaron Fox, who is not a great shooter, will clog up the paint for Domantas Sabonis, and at the same time, we know De'Aaron Fox likes playing fast. Domantas Sabonis is not. He can play fast, but he's more of a half-court type of player. So the fit with De'Aaron Fox, I think, is a real issue. And then you give a Buddy Hield who's a shooter. Again, he wasn't playing great for you, but he's another name that the defense has to at least respect.
I mean, they were gonna have to move Buddy Hield to begin with. Like it was clear from the big when they were trying to basically almost trade him to the Lakers that Buddy Hield is gonna be gone from the Kings. But again, for the Pacers, I love this move. I think this was a steal. You get a player in Tyrese Halliburton who was a lottery pick, a steal of a pick for the Sacramento Kings. Great player, can only get better. You also get Buddy Hield, who, again, keep him or you can flip him later on, but he can still be a serviceable player for you. Tristan Thompson, you can either buy out or flip him later. But Tyrese Halliburton, getting a piece like that for Domantas Sabonis is exactly what you need to kick off your rebuild.
And again, he's a bigger guard as well, so he can play off of Malcolm Brogdon, who you didn't need to trade because he's still kind of a young player as well.
And you can keep Miles Turner now. Now the team makes sense. Like now you don't have like two bigs kind of clogging the middle. Now you got one big in Miles Turner who can spread the floor. You got Tyrese Halliburton who can score. You got Brogdon. I like what the Pacers are kind of doing right now. In terms of grades, obviously the Indiana Pacers. What would you say?
Like an A minus, whatever.
They did really well in this deal. Cleveland Cavaliers. I mean, we kind of touched on them. They did really well. Sacramento, I'm gonna give them a C+. I just don't know what this is gonna entail for the future. I don't know how this makes you better, and you kind of did. You did Halliburton dirty. Like I truly believe that you shouldn't do a guy dirty.
We'll see the real effects of this trade in a couple years because we'll see how good of a player Halliburton is. If he stays at the same player he is right now, maybe it won't be as bad of a deal for Sacramento. But if he gets better, which we all project him to be, this is going to look really bad for the Sacramento Kings.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Bringing us into the final major trade of the deadline. This was a 14 deal between the Milwaukee Bucks, Sacramento Kings, the Detroit Pistons, and the LA Clippers. And the Milwaukee Bucks ended up getting Serge Ibaka and 2 future second-round picks and, of course, some cash considerations. Everyone loves cash considerations.
Especially after the pandemic.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The Sacramento Kings did Dante DiVincenzo, Trey Lyles, and Josh Jackson. And the Detroit Pistons get Marvin Bagley III. The Clippers get Rodney Hood. They get him back. And they get Semi Ojeleye. To be honest with you, this was an okay trade. I think every team kind of got what they wanted. Like the Bucks needed a big man, so they got Serge Ibaka, who I think will be if he returns to form, can be a decent contributor. He experienced veteran. Go get another. Giannis can get you another ring. Serge. The Kings, I like them getting Dante DiVincenzo. I actually kind of like that move. I'm not.
And Josh Jackson, who's played, who's revived his career.
Yeah, like I'm not necessarily mad at this move for the Sacramento Kings. They had to trade Bagley, and the Pistons getting him. I think the Pistons and Dwayne Casey will definitely mold Marvin Bagley into a better player, and I think him getting out of Sacramento will, of course, help that as well. And the Clippers, I mean, Ibaka wasn't doing anything for you, so
you got some depth out of it.
Pretty much.
The Bucks needed a big man after Brook Lopez probably might be done for the season. Well, he hasn't even played yet, so they basically needed some big man depth, and Serge Ibaka was probably the best option out there. Now, again, like you said, if he does return to form, that could be a big boost for them. The Pistons getting Marvin Bagley, I think, is very interesting because it gives you another young player, especially paired with Cade Cunningham. The pick and roll might be very nice. Marvin Bagley, I think last year averaged 15 and 8 on pretty good efficiency, so he definitely has the potential. It just wasn't working out in Sacramento. If he gets his defense into shape, which hopefully Dwayne Casey will
and remains
preach,
healthy,
right?
That's a big thing.
Exactly. But like the pick and roll with Cade Cunningham throwing up the lobs to Marvin Bagley, who's like a top 10 athletic player in the league, right? So yeah, I think it was a good move for basically all teams. It was one of those more low-key moves, but it worked out for, I think, every team involved.
Yep. So those were some of the major deals. We're now going to kind of quickly go through some of the smaller trades. First and foremost, the Raptors finally traded Goran Dragic because screw that guy. Like, seriously, the guy, like...
He's chilling in Miami.
Bro, how did you chill in Miami? The first one, the place that traded you away, they didn't want you. They replaced you with Kyle Lowry. You just go and chill at their facility.
To be fair to him, the Raptors did give him permission to do whatever the hell he wanted. And the Raptors told him, like, yo, you're not going to be on the team. So, in fairness to him, but again, he did not endear himself to fans with the way he came to Toronto.
Yeah, so the Raptors basically traded away Goran Dragic and a 2022 first-round pick, it's lottery protected, for Thaddeus Young, Drew Eubanks, who the Raptors have already waived, and a 2022 second-round pick via the Detroit Pistons. Small move, but it's a pretty decent pickup picking up Thaddeus Young. Now, Raptor fans, we all know we've been trying to get Thaddeus Young for like how many years now? We finally get him. Now, he's a little bit older. Now, I'm not too sold on giving away a first-round pick for a guy who's on an expiring, but he can contribute right away. And last season with the Bulls, Thaddeus Young was basically the hottest commodity out there. And, you know, if he can replicate some of that for the Raptors,
it's a decent trade, to be honest. Thaddeus Young. Now, again, I'm not a big fan of having 95 power forwards off of the bench, right? But Thaddeus Young, if there's anybody that can make it work, it's Nick Nurse. Thaddeus Young's a pretty good playmaker. He's a good defender. So, you know,
I can see Boucher going to the small four. I can see Nick Nurse being like, yo, Boucher, Precious, and Thad Young.
Yeah, man, it'll be interesting. Thad Young, listen, and, you know, you got rid of a guy who wasn't doing anything for you. And in terms of picks, you basically just moved down a couple of spots in the draft. That's basically what happened, right? You moved down a couple of spots.
In a weak draft already. Like, exactly. The draft is going to be reportedly weak.
So it's a decent move for the Raptors. The Spurs can do whatever they want with Grogic.
They're gonna probably buy him out. That's the most likely scenario.
Yeah. So the Spurs got a pick for a guy who wasn't doing anything for them. And Drew Eubanks is, who cares, right? So,
bro, he had a better Raptors tenure than Goran Dragic. I'm just gonna say that. Like, Raptor fans love Drew Eubanks more than they love freaking Goran Dragic.
Yeah, it's all right. It's an all right trade for both teams. Like I mentioned in the beginning of the episode, I guess Raptors fans were a bit disappointed with nothing really happening outside of that. But at the same time, like, you don't want to be one of those teams like the Sacramento Kings who just force a trade when you don't need to.
The Raptors are currently also on an 8-game winning streak. So, do you really want to interfere with that?
Exactly.
That's like, also another one.
A lot of fans don't understand, like, bro, first of all, there's two sides to the trade. The other team has to obviously accept the trade, too. Like, you can't just be like, yo, I want Miles Turner, Indiana, give him to me for nothing. Like, that's not how it works. Yeah. Right? So, I think overall, okay day for the Raptors.
It's a pretty decent move. Next move is Montrezl Harrell actually going to the Charlotte Hornets. The Hornets acquired Montrezl Harrell in exchange for Vernon Carey, Ish Smith, and a second-round pick.
Well, Charlotte wanted him in the offseason.
I guess so. And they finally get him. Now, he is undersized, but I guess a 6-man off the bench.
Oh, Charlotte needs a big man, basically.
Yeah.
Right? They have one.
They have Miles Plumlee.
Mason.
Mason Plumlee, sorry. Yeah. But yeah, not a bad move. Again, Ish Smith, and doesn't really. Didn't he go back to the Wizards? Yeah, he went back to the Wizards.
This is his. Well, technically, this is the same team. Otherwise, I think he would have set the record if this was a different team they moved to for the most teams.
I think he's a 12.
Yeah, but again, this is he was already on the Wizards, and Wizards fans love him. Rightfully so. He's a nice player. Obviously, he's older now, but he is still one of the fastest players in the league.
Yeah, this was a small move, but we'll see what happens with it. Next move, the Spurs moving on from Derek White. The Spurs flipped Derek White to the Boston Celtics in exchange for Josh Richardson, Romeo Langford, a 2022 first-round pick, which is top 4 protected, and a 2028 first-round pick swap.
Well, now a concurrent move, the Boston Celtics got back Daniel Tice, and they traded away Dennis Schroeder, Enes Freedom, and Bruno Fernando to the Rockets.
And Enes Freedom just got waived.
Yeah.
But again, the Celtics, they got Derek White and Daniel Tice. Now, this is clearly a Brad Stevens move because Brad Stevens loved Daniel Tice. Didn't want to see him go, but I don't think the Celtics were able to pay him. So that's why he ended up going to the Rockets. So Daniel Tice going back to the Celtics. Again, they just needed a better center than Al Horford right now. So getting him back with Time Lord is not a bad idea. Derek White, I think, will be serviceable for them. He'll be more serviceable than Josh Richardson. The Spurs, again, they got another first rounder, which is pretty cool. Now that they have I think they have their own first rounder, the Raptors pick, and they now have the Celtics pick. Not a bad option for the Spurs, who are clearly in rebuilding mode now. And yeah, just not a bad piece of business.
And for the Houston Rockets, they just basically got off of Daniel Tice's contract.
Yeah.
So I think it was a good, decent move for all parties involved. The Celtics probably benefited the most, obviously, with, they're trying to make the playoffs right now. Derek White, they need a point guard, so I guess Derek White is probably like the best option they could get, which is not bad.
He's a good player. I like Derek White a lot.
And Josh Richardson, though he did play well for the Celtics, it's Josh Richardson, right? The inconsistency was going to show sooner or later. So Celtics did an all right job. Houston got rid of some money, and the Spurs got a pick. So all parties are happy.
Yeah, pretty much. Finally, the last move of the trade deadline is the Phoenix Suns basically getting Torrey Craig back. So the Suns get Torrey Craig and Aaron Holiday. The Pacers get Jalen Smith and a second-round pick. Jalen Smith was actually a former lottery pick, which is pretty interesting that now he's with the Pacers. And the Wizards get everyone's favorite, cash considerations. again, the Wizards basically were just blowing shit up now. They're basically like, listen, Aaron Holiday, we got you from the Pacers. We're going to trade you away now to the Phoenix Suns, who are probably going to make better use of you. And Torrey Craig, I mean, Phoenix fans love Torrey Craig. Apparently.
Well, Aaron Holiday is probably not going to play because they do have Phoenix obviously has CP3.
But it's depth.
Yeah, Cameron Payne, and then...
Depth and insurance.
And my guy, Alfred Payton. But yeah, this was a very good move for the Suns because I think Gigi Redick said it like on his podcast right now, but you can never have enough 3-and-D guys, big wings in today's league. And the Phoenix Suns just got another one in Torrey Craig to back up guys like Jay Crowder, Cam, and Mikhail. Like you mentioned, Pacers got a young player in Jalen Smith. We'll see what they do in terms of his extension. But it'll be interesting nonetheless. And then the Wizards got cash. Basically, to sum up this trade deadline, there was a couple of big players that moved, but there was a lot of cost cutting for teams. I think this will be a trend for the next couple of years because obviously we know what happened for the past 2 years, which is still going on, by the way, and teams are still losing money.
Yeah, and the salary cap, I don't know how much it's going to be going up by, but...
So, yeah, teams are going to do a lot of financial moves, and that's kind of where we're going to be at in the league. So don't be surprised if these kind of moves keep happening into next season, the season beyond.
Yeah, for sure. So that were the trades of the trade deadline. Let us know what you guys think. Do you agree or disagree? Which ones were your favorite? Which ones you didn't really like so much?
Definitely. Who are the biggest winners of the trade deadline?
Yeah, who were the biggest winners of the trade deadline and the losers, of course. But let us know either in the comment section on YouTube or on social media. Finally, we have a very short up and under segment for this week because the NBA All-Star teams and the All-Star drafts have been officially announced. We have Team LeBron versus Team Durant. Just to kind of recap, Team LeBron, the starters for Team LeBron, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Steph Curry, DeMar DeRozan, obviously LeBron, and Nikola Jokic. The LeBron's reserves are Jimmy Butler, Luka Doncic, Darius Garland, James Harden, Donovan Mitchell, Chris Paul, and Fred VanVleet. And for Team Durant, obviously Durant is not playing, so Jason Tatum was promoted as a starter. So they have Joel Embiid, John Morant, Jason Tatum, Andrew Wiggins, and Trae Young. Off the bench, LaMelo Ball, Devin Booker, Rudy Gobert, Zach LaVine, Chris Middleton, DeJounte Murray, Karl Anthony Towns, and Draymond Green, who is not going to be playing. So, are you up or under on the rosters, and which do you prefer?
I mean, obviously, everyone's already said it. LeBron's going to go 5-0. Well, probably, right? Dude, the GM strikes again, right? Now, I think the best part of this, there was a couple of first-time All-Stars, which is always great. The All-Star teams are nice, and I think it's gonna be a fun weekend. They've revamped the Rising Stars challenge now with.
I mean,
four
it's basically
teams.
a rookie-sophomore game.
Well, it is. That's what it was before the Rising Stars, and then they also revamped the Skills Challenge, which. I don't know. I was kind of a fan of the skills challenge as it was currently, but I get the fact that they're trying to experiment with it. So they basically have 3 teams. One is the Antetokounmpo brothers.
Bro, that one makes no sense.
Giannis, Thanasis, and Alex, obviously from the 905 in the G League. The other one is the Cavs team with Garland, Jared Allen, and Evan Mobley, and I forget who the last team is.
It's Cade Cunningham, Scotty Barnes, and Josh Giddey.
Yeah, so the rookie team. So I don't really remember how they were going to make it work, but I'll see you at All-Star Weekend. Hopefully it'll be fun. And again, the All-Star Weekend is a fun thing for the fans, so at the end of the day, whatever. The funniest part, I think, of this whole process was the All-Star Draft.
Oh, yeah.
Especially the James Harden situation. Hey, shout out to LeBron for coming in clutch to make that situation happen.
Bro, he did it out of request from Ernie Johnson. Or was it
from Chuck? It was from Chuck. That was some nice movement. And plus, LeBron got James Harden out of it. I think he always wanted James Harden. But he made the situation a lot more funny.
He made KD sweat, and KD was... you can visibly tell Kevin Durant was in no mood to do this draft. Bro, he was just so mad. And,
it happened an hour after the trade.
Bro, he was so mad, man. Because... And I don't blame him for being mad because it's Kevin Durant did all this work to get James Harden to Brooklyn. And James Harden was just yeah, I'm done, man. I'm leaving. Bro, I'd feel so bad. And KD wasn't even going to pick him. You know, the funny thing is, he let LeBron take Curry, and Harden, when he had the chance to get him. KD's team is all the young guys. If you look at it, KD has all the young guys. LeBron has all the vets, which is pretty interesting to say the least. I'm
typical LeBron.
Pretty much, and I mean, I don't blame LeBron. Like, who would you rather take, the vets or the young kids who don't really know?
I mean, the vets are better than the
exactly
kids right now.
So, like, LeBron's team is clearly better, but in terms of the main attraction was the All-Star draft. Just how funny it was. Yo, Charles Barkley was losing his shit because he was just dying on like, yo, he's like, I'm with you, KD.
it was a fun All-Star draft, I think, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, shout out Fred VanVleet, who's on Team LeBron. So definitely, we're probably gonna be supporting Team LeBron.
We're rooting for Team LeBron at this point.
And shout out Mr. Fantastic as well,
bro.
Andrew Wiggins.
Bro, I didn't even know about that.
Yo, that video was funny, man.
And they showed it too. Which
yeah. So
funny.
Shout out Vaughn. You know how it is. And yeah, I think this All-Star weekend is gonna be fun, especially after. You know, all we ask is that we get a semi-competitive game. We're probably never gonna get a game again like the 2021 after Kobe died. Because that one was that was hands down the greatest All-Star.
Kyle Lowry took 2 charges in that game.
Exactly. That was the best All-Star game I've ever seen for sure. We're probably never gonna get that again, but hopefully at least it can be a decently semi-competitive All-Star game and a fun All-Star weekend.
Yeah. But with that concludes this week's episode. We hope you guys enjoyed it. Definitely subscribe to the show on all the various platforms. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, YouTube. Definitely subscribe to the show so you never miss a great episode from us. Also, follow us on social media, Twitter and Instagram at @UpLetterN_podcast, Facebook.com/UpAndUnderPodcast for all the latest updates whenever we post a new episode or reaction to news as they occur. Also, check out our website, UpAndUnderPodcast.com. It's our central hub for the show.
Which will be coming out soon.
Which will be updated soon. The website is still under construction, but that will be there, and it will be a place where we write all our blog posts with every single episode. So if you don't have time to listen or watch the episode, you can read about it on our website. Definitely check that out. Check that out when it's available. We'll let you guys know. And yeah, man, All-Star Weekend is gonna be upon us now, and then second half of the season will begin. So things will start to ramp up a little bit. But with that concludes this week's episode. We'll see you guys on the next one. Take it easy.
Easy.